Hi folks, it's me Michaela and welcome back to my channel. Today we are belatedly starting a reading vlog and there are two reasons for that. The first reason is because I started reading The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman, and then I realized that the book I'm reading after this is Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, and that these two books have something in common, and that commonality is that they're both mystery series sequels. How fun. And I was like, that could be cute, that could be fun. Maybe I should make a reading vlog where I read both of them because that's kind of like a theme, and who doesn't love a theme? And then the second reason is because I actually filmed this intro yesterday, but then I apparently actually didn't hit the record button, so there's actually no intro, which is why we're making the intro now. So here we are. So The Man Who Died Twice is the second book in the Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman, and Good Girl Bad Blood is the second book in A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. Both of these first books I absolutely adored. I loved them. It was so fun. It's kind of like a fun juxtaposition about having the sequels for both of these series in the same video, because this is following a protagonist who's in their teens, and this is following protagonists who are in like their 80s, which is like kind of fun, quirky, we love it. But I had a great time reading both these books, and so hence I'm reading both of the sequels, and I'm hoping that I'm gonna like both of these books just as much, maybe even more than the first. I feel like sequels can go like one of two ways mainly. It's like either because you're familiar with the characters from having already met them in a previous book, you absolutely like adore the second book more than the first book, or it could be that like the mystery in the second book just isn't as strong of a concept. It doesn't hit you the same way the mystery in the first book does, and then the second book is kind of feels like a disappointment compared to the first. Like I feel like that's the two options. I'm really hoping for the first option for both of these because I would like to like the books I read. But I did start reading The Man Who Died Twice. I'm about 100 pages into it now. It's pretty fun. It's an interesting concept. I feel like this is going to be very similar to Thursday Murder Club, where there's kind of like multiple aspects of mysteries going on at the same time, and you're trying to figure out like which of these things are connected and which is just a completely separate thing, and kind of like that. I feel like it's going to be a little tricky with the mind, which is fun. I love it. I think it's also like, because it's British, there's just a certain kind of sarcasm in this writing that I absolutely adore. I love our main characters. We're seeing a lot of all of our favorites: Ibrahim, Joyce, Elizabeth, and Ron, obviously, the Thursday Murder Club themselves. But then Chris and Donna, the police officers, are back, and Bogdan, who works at Cooper's Chase, a retirement village that they all live in, is also back. So if you don't know about the Thursday Murder Club, it is, like I said, Joyce, Elizabeth, Ron, and Ibrahim, and they're all seniors in a retirement village who meet every Thursday to try and solve cold cases. And then when an actual murder happens at the retirement home, in a way, it's not really at the retirement home, but related to them, when somebody they know actually gets murdered, they decide to solve the murder. And so the second book now is kind of them coming across another mystery. It's kind of like these events happen around them and then they're like, oh, well, we're here, we might as well solve it, kind of scenarios, which I like. It's fun. I'm having a good time with it so far. I'm interested to see exactly where it leads. Like, I'm assuming people are gonna die. Apparently this man is gonna die twice. Stay tuned. I'll try not to say like too much about the actual plot in it because obviously I don't want to give any spoilers, especially since it's a sequel and it's a mystery book, but I'll let you know my general feelings overall. Right now, I'm loving it. I'm having a good time. It's a grand old time we're having with this book. It's cute. We love it. Also, it's like really floppy. Just look at the flop. Appreciate the floppiness of the paperback with me. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I'll just like, let you know how the reading goes. I'm expecting to kind of be reading pretty slow this week because I've gotten back into cross stitching, so I've also been splitting my hobby time between the two. But these are both pretty quick reads. The last time I remember it for both of the first books, they have like pretty short chapters and they're pretty fast paced, so it's really easy to read these quickly. So I'm hoping that I'll still read these like relatively fast. But I'll update you when I have more thoughts, more feelings, and all that. So I'll see you then.
Hello, I am a little over 200 pages now through The Man Who Died Twice, and I'm really loving it so far. I kind of thought I would. This one is really turning into that kind of sequel where, because you know the characters more, you like it more. The one aspect of the Thursday Murder Club that I didn't necessarily like so much was the fact that there was so many characters introduced, but now that so many of them are reoccurring and you already are familiar with them, it makes for a much more enjoyable read of this mystery because you're able to focus more on the mystery at hand. There is murder. I feel like that's expected in the Thursday Murder Club book series, but there is like part of the mystery that's not murder. Like they're related, but they are kind of two separate things that are most likely connected, but also maybe they're not. But it is definitely fun. I think you're really getting to see a lot of the quirks of the characters in the main four. Though I have to say, so far in this, I don't want to say who exactly because it could be considered a spoiler, I guess, but one of the main four in our group is not featured nearly as much as the other three so far, and I'm not really a huge fan of that because I want to be spending time with all of our Thursday Murder Club friends. I don't want there to be one that feels left out. I don't like that. But like I said, it is fun. It is like quite, I don't know, it feels like very similar of a mystery to the last one, but also like a very different mystery to the last one. I feel like the police in this time it's just more complicated. We have new characters that complicate how things are running, but also the Thursday Murder Club are up to their usual shenanigans, and I'm loving it. I'm not quite sure if it's going to be like a 5-star read, but I think it's definitely like a solid 4. I'm really intrigued about like how this is going to resolve and you know like what the results of this is going to be. And I also am curious if it's going to set up anything for the third book, or if the third book is just going to be like with the end of the first book into the second book where like the new book just picks up from where the last book left off and the last book doesn't necessarily lead you to the next book, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm gonna read some more. I'm gonna make my coffee. I'm gonna make pizza. It's gonna be great. It's actually Friday, so the weekend started. That's why I'm doing all of those things. But I'll give you an update probably when I finish the book, since there's not that much left at this point. So when I'm done, I'll give you my final thoughts, and then we'll move on to Good Girl, Bad Blood. Hello, super quick check-in because I need to head off to work, but I did finish reading The Man Who Died Twice last night, and I ended up giving this 5 stars. I really love the way this ended, and I think the like writing style and like the improvement in portraying the mystery in the story is so much better in the second book than the first book. There's definitely like fewer characters, and the majority of the characters you're now familiar with from reading the first book, which makes it like much easier to keep track of all of the people you're reading about and like what they're doing because you already know them. I found, like I said, in the first Thursday Murder Club book, it was sometimes like overwhelming how many names were being like thrown out. And then I also think that this mystery is much more concise, and I think the way it is like concluded is done better than in the first book as well. And because of that, 5 stars, because the first book was already so good for me. It was 4. So like if we're improving, so good. And again, like we're getting into fun like mind puzzle riddle-y kind of territory with spy-like behavior, and I love when there's spy things involved, when there's heisting like qualities to a story. What do we know? I love a heist. Correct. Thank you. So now that I finished this, and it was such a grand, fantastic success, I am going to be starting Good Girl, Bad Blood while I'm at work today, most likely during my lunch break. And I will update you once I've kind of gotten far enough into it to be able to talk about it. All I really know is that it is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So I'm assuming we're still following Pip. I believe there's like a podcasting element into this, so it is also like a multimedia. It's multimedia like the first book is, which is an element of the first book that I loved. But I am curious about how exactly this is going to, like, I'm wondering where the mystery is going to come from for this second book and how Pip is going to get involved in it. Because I assume Pip is still our main character. Yes. Because the first book felt really like, like just one story. So I just like, where is it going to go? Where is it going to lead? And am I going to like it? Because sometimes when things feel like it was concluded, then I don't necessarily like the sequels because it's like, why do you exist? So I'm hoping that I don't feel that way because I like that this exists. And it's a popular series, so I feel like it must still be good. But also it's like a second book in a trilogy, so maybe like this is like the low point and then the third book is gonna get, who knows? But I'm gonna find out because I'm gonna read it. But first I gotta go to work, okay? See ya. Hello, good morning. I'm here to update you on my reading so far of Good Girl, Bad Blood. I am now about, I think, 170 pages into it so far. So I have a good idea of like the premise and what's going on. And I am really liking it so far. So I was kind of curious about how exactly this would turn into another mystery. And basically the beginning of the book, Pip has made her school project from the first book of solving a murder into a podcast, and she's gone like super viral, super famous, and everyone's like, oh my god, can't wait for season 2 of the podcast, which she names A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which is the name of the first book. So that's a cute little wink wink, over there. And she's like, my sleuthing days are over, I'm done, no more mysteries, this is it. Okay, we're gonna do like a follow along and like talk about the trials of the people who were arrested at the end of the first book. I don't think that's spoilers. She solved the murder. I also don't think that's spoilers. You don't know who it is. Anyway, but that's it. No more. And then one of her close friends comes and is like, my brother is missing. So then she's like, that's it, throwing it out the window, and she's on another mission. She's sleuthing again, and she makes it a new season of her podcast. So the multimedia aspect in here, the main one, is podcast dialogue. In the first book, the main kind of multimedia aspect is her log entries for a project. So that's kind of nice that that's like switched up but similar, where you're reading like the interviews that she's having with people for the podcast. You're finding out things about the missing person, and like things are like becoming very question mark what was going on, so I'm enjoying it. I'm having a good time. Again, I think it likes very similarly to the first book. Like, this is not very realistic, but I also don't really expect it to be. It's a teenager solving crime that adults with resources apparently can't. I don't see that as being this hyper realistic, yeah, everything in this could happen exactly how it happens kind of book. I like to just lean into it and have a good time. And that's what I'm having. It's another quick read. Like I said, I'm like 70 pages into it, and it's been like 2 days. So that's pretty quick reading for me, considering it's also been 2 work days. So I've been working while I've been reading this. So yeah, that's kind of what my thoughts are so far. I'm gonna read some more. I'll give you some updates a little further in. This is about I think it's about a 400-page book, so I think it's a little bit more beefy than the first book in the series. But so far, I am liking it. I think it did take maybe a tad too long to kind of get things started, because it felt like nothing really was happening for probably the first 50, 60 pages. You're just like, oh, Pip has a podcast and she's not gonna sleuth anymore. But she is, because like there's a book. What else would the book be about if not the sleuthing mystery? But yeah, once things get started, they get started, and I'm having a good time. So that's what I have to say. I have to eat my breakfast now, and then I have to go to work because I'm a responsible adult. Ignore my hair, it's still drying. Okay, see you when I see you. Hello, I am getting ready to head to bed for the night, but I thought I would give you an update of how Good Girl, Bad Blood is going, since I am a little under 300 pages in now. So I have about 100 pages of the book left, and it is very hooking. It keeps you hooked. There's always little bits of the mystery being revealed, and things are kind of like, because this is like an active case, all of the tension and the suspense comes from the fact that like time keeps passing while this person is missing, and the more time passes and the more of the things that are like revealed through Pip's investigation, the higher the stakes feel to be. And so that kind of really easily keeps you reading, because you keep getting these really tiny tidbits about this person and their movements and the night they were missing, and it makes you all like, but what's the truth? I gotta keep reading. What are they gonna find next? I will say, I think I did still enjoy the first book more than I'm enjoying this book. Not that I'm not enjoying this book, but I just feel like in this book, Pip is kind of just not as likable of a character. I think because in the first book, she kind of falls into this obsession with the investigation, and because of that, you can kind of, as the reader, forgive her for some of her not so amazing actions that she maybe does in the first book. But in this book, she's just sometimes kind of rude and not very nice and does things to people, but then she also is aware of that. Like, she's aware that like she could be falling into this obsessive thing again, but because she's aware, it just makes me not like her that much, because it's like, okay, then why are you doing it? Like, girl, like, check yourself. If you know, then no. Like, you don't just get to be like a rude person because you're a teenager who is unofficially investigating something. Like, that's not how the world works. So it's just like a little harder to fully enjoy everything about the book when I'm kind of not liking the main character all the time right now. So I think this is probably leaning towards like a 4.5, depending on how it ends. But like, it's still a really good book. But yeah, I think the first book just really hooked me in a way that I loved. And even when I reread the first book, it wasn't quite the same 5 stars as it was the first time I read it. So it's not like shocking me that this second book is not giving me 5-star vibes, but I'm still having a really good time. So I'm excited. I'm gonna finish reading the book, not tonight because I need to go to bed, but I will finish reading the book and then I'll let you know my final thoughts about the book. Okay? Good night. Hello. I'm sorry if it is really dark, but it is a very dreary, rainy day here in Montreal, so there's not much natural light to be had. But last night I finished reading Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, so I'm gonna give you some final thoughts on this and then wrap this whole little video up. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I did find the ending and the twist and the drama, it was all very exciting, it was all very suspenseful. You know, I was here for it for the most part. I was having a good time, I didn't want to put it down, all that jazz. I did find, however, that like the twist, I didn't love it as much as like the twist and scenario at the end of the first book, because this one didn't feel like it was quite, like, I feel like it wasn't set up as well as in the first book. I felt like this one came a little out of the blue, and it's not like there weren't any clues, but I think it was kind of something that was almost impossible for the reader to figure out before it happened, part of it, you know, like, because there was this whole clue that came out. The reader didn't know about this big clue until like 2/3 through the book. And so at that point you're like, whoa, it just changes everything. And like, how does it, just didn't feel quite as good. Like, I feel like in the first book you were able to really see exactly how we got to this point, and you're like, oh, this and this, like, there were clues there that could have led you to see this. Did I guess it in the first book? No. Did I guess it in this book? Also no. But I just feel like the setup for it in the first book was better. There's also like an aspect at the end of this book, kind of like text formatting wise, where Holly Jackson does, the best way I can explain it is like the writing becomes very like poetic, like on the page, where there's a bunch of extra spacing, or things are taking up different lines. Like, the formatting of the text on the page is
supposed to affect the way that you read it and kind of portray the mindset of Pip. And she did also do this at the end of the first book, but I feel like it worked better in the first book because it wasn't as extensive. There's a lot more of it in this book, and it feels like a really sudden change out of nowhere, and I think that this sudden switch into this like more poetic style writing formatting just felt really like jarring. It didn't feel like the rest of the book at all, and because there was much more of it, then like it really took me out of it a bit. In the first book, it was like a really small amount, and I think it worked really well. So to just see it kind of be like repeated again in this book, and it just didn't do the same thing. The effect just wasn't there, and I think it was because it was just doing the same thing but more of it, so it just like it wasn't effective for me. Like I wasn't a fan of it in this one. In the first book I was, in this one I'm not. So 4 stars. It was still a good book. It was still a good read, but I do think the first book is better than this one. I will obviously keep reading in the series. Like, it was not a bad book by any means. I had a good time. Again, I think in general with the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, you gotta go into it and not take it seriously. Like, you cannot go into this and be like, this is a realistic thing where everything could definitely 100% happen. Because, like I said, like, Pip sometimes is really unlikable in this book. And some of the things she doesn't make any freaking sense. And even for someone who's 18, it's like nobody's logic would say this is the thing I should do. And you just have to kind of accept that and move on and just enjoy the fast-paced, suspenseful read. Like, you just have to do that. And I think that's why some people can really dislike this series, is because if you're looking for like realism in that form, it's not here, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean I don't like the book. I had a good time with the book. Again, I wasn't expecting realism in this book. I don't want it to be real, but that was my thoughts on the book, if that makes sense. I feel like I was kind of like rambling for a while there, but that's fine. So here we are, 2 mystery sequels down for this video, and I think it was a very successful video. We had one that I thought was better than the first book, and we had one that I thought was a little worse than the first book. So it's like it's a nice balance, but both were good books and both were good series in my opinion. So I'm excited. I'm gonna keep reading in both of these. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder has 1 more book. It's a completed trilogy, so that's, what's the 3rd book called? As Good as Dead. I'm gonna buy that at some point and read that. I'll finish the series, and then I'll take another series off of my currently reading series list. How exciting. I love reaching goals. And then of course the Thursday Murder Club is an ongoing series that now has 4 books in it, and I've read 2 of them. Had a good time in the past little while reading these. I think it was definitely some light, fun reading, and it felt very appropriate for the time of year. Reading the mysteries and this in October and end of September, you know, like it felt right. It felt good, and I enjoyed. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on mystery series. I feel like they can be really hit or miss because it really depends on liking the detectives, but let me know, do you think the sequels are usually better, worse? Do you not care? Do you not read sequels? Do you not read series? All that jazz, let me know. I'll be curious to hear. If you like the video, give it a like. If you happen to like me, consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. And with that, I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Bye-bye.